Well, ladies and gentlemen, the college football AP preseason top 25 has officially been released. And so these will be the initial rankings for all the teams when we hit the ground in week 1, which begins in a few weeks with week 0, or week 0 might be 2 weeks. No, I think week 0 is next week, and then week 1 begins in August this year. Every team with a double bye. It's a little bit of a longer season. And we do have a very, very similar preseason AP top 25 to the coaches poll, with Georgia getting 46 first place votes. Ohio State did get 15. They are clearly in second right now behind Georgia. You do have Oregon getting 1 single first place vote. They are in third. Same thing with the coaches poll. As I discussed about a week ago when it came out, Texas is in 4th. Alabama in 5th. Ole Miss starting out at number 6. A very high initial ranking for Ole Miss with all of the transfer portal defensive players they got returning. Jackson Dart should have a pretty good offense. We will see. It's going to be a tough year in the SEC. Notre Dame at number 7, so no changes within the top 7 there. Penn State is ahead of Michigan in this poll. I would imagine that's because someone had Michigan at number 1 overall just because they won the national title in the coaches poll. But the AP poll does have Penn State clearly in front of Michigan. Not that it matters all that much. Michigan, the defending national champions, will begin with an initial ranking of number 9. You do have FSU at number 10 right now. They will play in week 0. We'll see with FSU, new quarterback, but I do think DJ Uiagalelei is a little bit of underrated. We will see. Missouri at number 11. They've got Utah, the first Big 12 team right now, coming in at number 12. LSU at number 13, so they just flip-flopped them from the coaches poll. Clemson at number 14. Tennessee at 15. Gee, I mean, these are like the exact same. Oklahoma at number 16. Oklahoma first year in the SEC. We will see. A lot of people think they're going to be better this year. People are surprised Oklahoma's ranked that high. Not me. I mean, they're a talented team, but it is going to get a lot tougher for them. Oklahoma State at number 17. So Oklahoma State, they're in a very winnable Big 12. They've got a very high initial ranking. You can see Utah in front of them, but then Oklahoma State, and then Kansas State losing Will Howard. They've got a young quarterback, Avery Johnson, who they think could be better. Miami initially at number 19, not surprising with Cam Ward. They got some other transfer portal players. They've invested heavily into their NIL. They've got some 5-star defenders entering their 2nd and 3rd years. A&M at number 20. Arizona at number 21. They've got Kansas, and I agree with this. Kansas at number 22. I am high on Kansas, especially their offense. They do have that home and home with Illinois, I believe. They're finishing that off, so they'll go on the road to Illinois this year, unless that happened 2 years ago, because I know last year Illinois was at Kansas, but obviously Kansas this year not going to be playing at their home stadium. USC, I think USC is going to be a dangerous team. They can upset a few top teams in the Big Ten. They've got the offense to do it, we would think, with Lincoln Riley and a revamped defense. You would think it'd be almost impossible for their defense to be worse. NC State at 24. They should be an interesting team in the ACC. We'll have to see about them. And then they do have Iowa at number 25, maybe slightly better on offense. But, yeah, I saw Cade McNamara have a terrible outing. I don't know if that was just a practice game or whatever, but they reported he went 7 of 20. And then you can see this is a better way to look at others receiving votes. Just, like, list it to where they'd be ranked 26. So Louisville at number 26. Not too surprised. They had a good season last year. I don't think they're going to be nearly as good this season. Virginia Tech, they're a trendy team. They've got an interesting dual-threat QB who returned, who a lot of people said was going to get picked off in the transfer portal. He did not. And they have a very easy start to the season in terms of their schedule. You could make an argument they not easily, but they could be like 8-1 going into the Clemson game, which is their first very hard game. But they've got a pretty easy non-conference and really early ACC schedule. Boise State at 28. So I saw Boise State was trending. I think that's because people thought Boise State was going to be inside the top 25, but they are outside of it. Are they the highest group of 5 team at number 28? I believe they are. SMU is not a group of 5 team anymore. They are in the ACC, and they're at number 29. An easy schedule for them, so SMU, we'll have to see how they do their first year in the ACC. Iowa State at number 30. Iowa State seems to be the same thing every year, like 7-5, 8-4. It's like they've already peaked under Campbell, but we'll see. Liberty at 31. They've got a ridiculously easy schedule. I wonder how they'll handle that because their schedule is just so easy. We remember last year, they were the group of 5 representative to make the New Year's Six, and they got just demolished by Oregon in a total joke of a game. Washington at 32. So pretty crazy. Washington, they made the national title last year. They did lose like their top 3 playmakers and their starting quarterback, Penix Jr. So they are at 32. That's pretty surprising, but I mean, you can understand it based on how much they lost. It's just interesting to see a team that made the national title last year at 32. It kind of speaks to the idea that maybe it was like just a fluke magical season for Washington. They don't recruit that well to withstand consistently being inside the top 15. West Virginia at 33. So it'll be an interesting week 1 game. You have Penn State, who I believe is ranked 8th, if I remember that correctly. They're ranked 8th right now. They'll be going to West Virginia, who's unranked, but they did get votes to where they'd be 33. Memphis at 34. They're another potential group of 5 team that might have a shot at getting that auto bid into the playoff. Nebraska at 35. Nebraska, relatively easy schedule. I wonder if they will start Raiola, the true freshman. They do have an easy start to their schedule. You can make an argument they could be like, I think 6-0 going into the Ohio State game on the road. Wisconsin at 36. They're always kind of a mainstay. They've had a few down years recently. There's no doubt about it. UTSA at 37. You do have Tulane at 38. Those 2 teams, group of 5 teams, they always seem to be relatively good. App State's very similar. Kentucky at 40. Being in the SEC is tough. Auburn at 41. And then they do have Colorado, believe it or not, at 42. Colorado opens the season at home in a tough game against North Dakota State. I believe they're around 9-point favorites. North Dakota State was ranked as the number 2 team in the preseason FCS poll. South Dakota State, the number 1 team, believe it or not, faces Oklahoma State on the road in week 1. So Oklahoma State, that's going to be a tough matchup for them for sure. And so that's basically all the others receiving votes. So really not too surprising. They went Georgia over Ohio State. Perfectly normal. Georgia has the returning QB. Ohio State does not, so they're going to err on the side of caution. Also, Georgia did finish the season winning 63-3, and a lot of people thought they should have made the playoff anyways. They lost 1 game really close. Ohio State, on the other hand, kind of limped to the finish line, losing to Michigan. And then Missouri, even with McCord transferring, it's just not a good look. Oregon's getting a ton of hype this year. Obviously, you've got the game Ohio State at Oregon. Could that be a 1v2 matchup? It's probably going to be hard just because Georgia, I don't really see them losing early on. That game's in like week 5, Ohio State at Oregon. Georgia would probably have to lose to Clemson in week 1 in a neutral site game, which, by the way, neutral site games have got to go. I mean, it's 2024. I guess because there's no like actual leadership within college football, these teams they're just so boring games. Like any neutral site game, especially regular season, I can understand for the playoff and everything like that, you need it to be neutral site, but like a week 1 regular season game at Mercedes-Benz, that's just gross. The atmosphere is just so bad. But like imagine Clemson at Georgia. I mean, it would certainly be a lot harder for Clemson, but you could do a home and home where Georgia would then go to Clemson. And it's just sad to see these neutral site games. But yeah, that Ohio State-Oregon game is probably going to be 2 versus 3. I don't see Oregon losing in the season. I don't see Oregon losing early in the season. I don't see Ohio State either. Texas has that big game on the road, like week 2 at Michigan. And that's a big noon game, I think, which is kind of sad. Or maybe that is an ABC 3:30 game. But you've got Alabama at number 5. Bama is going to be interesting with Milroe. I know he's like 3rd or 4th Heisman odds. Ole Miss, I think, has the potential to let down just because they're under Lane Kiffin. I could see them finishing outside the top 10, possibly missing the playoff. Notre Dame, relatively easy schedule, and starting off at number 7. There's really no excuse for Marcus Freeman not to make the playoff, the 12-team playoff this year. Penn State as well, they need to make the playoff now that it's expanded. Michigan will be interesting. We'll see what happens to them with all these stuff that's coming out now. The cheating things. Will they have, a potential bowl ban or something? But right now they're at number 9. More possibly their new head coach getting suspended. FSU at number 10. FSU is kind of hard to gauge. I mean, they play in a relatively weak conference, and obviously that exposed them. I mean, I was for FSU missing the playoff because you lose Jordan Travis. It was obvious they weren't ready to compete. They were 13-0, though, and it's tough to see a team like that miss the playoff, but then they get annihilated by Georgia. Missouri, I think, probably is a bit overhyped, but they do have a relatively easy schedule, at least in comparison to other SEC teams. And Utah probably is the slight favorite out of the Big 12 to win the conference, which would give them a top 4 spot. Remember, that's how they do it. A Big 12 team will get a top 4 spot, an ACC team will get a top 4 spot, and then obviously an SEC team and a Big 10 team, they will all get buys. So one of Ohio State or Oregon will very likely host a playoff game because If Ohio State wins their conference, Oregon's probably going to be number 5 or number 6 playing in the first round. If Oregon wins the conference, Ohio State's probably going to be hosting a playoff game in the first round. I would also not be surprised if Penn State hosted a playoff game in the first round. Alabama possibly hosting a playoff game in the first round. Those would be other teams that could do that, which is kind of an exclusive thing because the first round it's on campus. So we're going to get something different where we'll have these games be played and they're really meaningful, but it's on campus. So I think it's kind of cool. But either way, guys, that is going to do it for this video. Make sure you follow me on X. Link to that's always in the description.